to Taste for Adventure.
The inaugural episode. We're here in the tavern.
That's right, yeah. I affectionately like to call it the Drinking Griffin Tavern after my mascot here, the Drinking Griffin. My name is Aaron, and I am a home brewer, and my home brewery is called Thirst for Adventure. So when we were coming up the name for this channel, we thought, hey, it's about tasting beer, Thirst for Adventure. Let's do Taste for Adventure.
Yeah, that works out. I'm Andrew. I'm not a beer judge or anything like that. Just a regular beer consumer. You know, I do a podcast with some friends, but other than that, you know, this is kind of a whole new venture, I think, for both of us, right?
Yes, definitely is. I have played around with a little bit of YouTube before, but not a series like this.
Right.
And really, I wanted to do something out of partially the boredom of quarantine. And I'm by no means a complete expert on all things beer and brewing. But this is a way for me to kind of keep my skills sharp and also do a lot of beer discovery. So we can hope you take this adventure with us.
Yeah. I mean, if you're anything like me, you'll be tasting along and learning the verbiage and kind of really how to taste a beer.
Exactly, and I think that's a great way to start this pilot episode as we launch the channel and start with some appropriate beers along with that type of theme. Mm-hmm. And before we get into all of the nitty-gritty details about what it takes to be a beer judge or all of the nuances of brewing, I thought we could start by just walking through like what it means to taste a beer and try to go through the evaluation process, not necessarily to judge it, but really to key in your senses on focusing on how to really taste beer for evaluation.
Mm-hmm. I agree. We've got a great lineup, kind of launching the channel themed beers, if you will. We've got Liftoff by Daredevil. We've got Rice Rocket by Off Square. And we've got Red Zeppelin by Half Acre.
That's right. And these are all Midwest beers. And sometimes I think in this channel we will try to go with all beers of one, style or to a particular theme. And this time the styles aren't necessarily all matching up, but we wanted to go with that launching theme here.
Yeah.
I think it's good to try a few different types of beers when we talk about evaluation for taste.
Absolutely. Well, I'm looking forward to learning a lot. So, you wanna blast off to the first beer here?
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool. That's gonna be Liftoff by Daredevil.
Okay. Liftoff.
To episode 1.
Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers. All right. So this one is Liftoff by Daredevil.
That's right. So Daredevil is a central Indiana craft brewery.
Yeah.
They're actually have some accolades. They've won Best Brewery at the Indiana State Fair a couple of years in a row.
That's nice.
Yeah,
nice.
So not super wide distribution, but they're putting out good stuff and being recognized for it.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I know Daredevil. This is described as a West Coast IPA. What is that exactly?
Right, I think everybody, if you're watching a beer YouTube channel, you probably know an IPA is kind of a hoppier beer, right?
Yeah.
So what a West Coast IPA is, that's one of the more classic American IPAs. And West Coast IPA describes a more firmly bitter, highly hopped beer. So back in the early days, we had IPAs and, they were a lot lower hopped than they are now. I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah, as the style and trends and tastes progressed, beers tend to keep getting more highly hopped and stronger and more bitter.
Yeah.
And I think West Coast IPA was the first region, the first kind of sub-style of IPA to develop with the stronger flavors and more firm bitterness.
Gotcha.
So when you're opening a West Coast IPA, traditional one, it's not going to be a super hazy, juicy IPA. That's more like your New England or East Coast style IPA. That's a lot more modern.
Yeah.
West Coast is going to be more, firm bitterness and highly hopped. So if you really like your beer bitter but fairly clean, a West Coast IPA is the way to go.
All right. Now you described it as hoppy, and then proceeded to throw a bunch of different terms out there. You've got juicy, you've got clean, you've got and all all of these terms. Is it really fair to kind of use a blanket like hoppy to describe maybe an IPA or any other beer that's kind of got more of that bitterness?
Yeah, think of it as hoppy is more like the blanket term.
Okay.
And the more you get into tasting, and we'll go through this a little bit, is the more specific you can get. So hoppy is about as broad as you can get.
Yeah.
And then, when you're evaluating a beer like an IPA, of course it's hoppy, but what do those hops provide in the beer? So hops can provide bitterness. Mm-hmm. They provide a lot of aroma and a lot of flavors that are beyond just bitterness, but you can have flavors. I think some of the main hop flavors are going to be citrusy.
Yes.
You can have floral or spicy, and not spicy hot, but think of like a pepper spiciness. You can also have like tropical or fruity type hops, and then a lot of the classic West Coast IPA hops are considered like dank or piney.
Okay.
So you're gonna have a lot of that like pine.
Yeah.
And that firm, like not quite woody. It's a little bit more crisp or bright than woody. But yeah, piney is definitely a classic West Coast American hop profile.
Now that you say that, I can definitely put the finger of my taste bud on that. And this is very piney. I mean, it's kind of, florally, for lack of a better term, but piney I think is a really excellent way to describe this beer.
Yeah, there you go. And piney
Perfect.
is much more specific than hoppy.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, especially when hoppy is just such a broad term in general.
Yeah, I would say it definitely has some pininess. A little bit dank, too. And again, dank is very typical of your very high alpha, very strong West Coast American hops.
Sure.
Can be very piney and also dank. And what I mean by dank is it can be like a little bit funky, and then think of like some of your more potent vegetables like garlic or onion. Now, not like as pungent like in a bad way, but it just almost reminds you of the sharpness and intensity of those flavors, but in a hop way. So I'm getting both dank and piney on this.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's very, very classic for a West Coast IPA.
Mm-hmm. And this is good. This is a very good beer. IPA is not super my style, as we'll likely see as this show continues. But this is good. I can see drinking. I can see drinking this for sure.
Yeah. So as we progress in the show, and once we get out of the first few episodes where we lay down the groundwork for tasting, judging, evaluating beer, my metric is, as we go along, we'll be really comparing the beer to the BJCP style guidelines and how close a particular beer that we sample is to what the BJCP says the guidelines for the style are. The BJCP is the Beer Judge Certification Program. And there are a few other beer-related education and certification programs, such as Cicerone, which is like the beer version of a wine sommelier.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
And there's also Siebel Institute as well.
I've not heard of that.
That's a little bit more for like professional brewers. You can get take educational programs in Siebel. So my metric is a lot more along with the formal BJCP type guidelines, and I really like your metric though too, which is probably a lot.
Yours is a little bit more laser focused. Mine is a little bit, more on the lines of if I'm at the bar, if I'm at my local craft beer bar, would I have another one? Would I have more than one of this? And I'm interested to see what we've got in the rest of the flight, but I mean, as of right now, I could definitely see myself having another one of these for sure.
Yeah, this is a very, it's a really nice, very, firmly bitter, potent West Coast IPA. But what's really nice about this too is, even though it's bitter, a lot of IPAs can have a harshness to them.
Yeah.
And this one, it's a what they call a clean bitterness, where it doesn't have that lingering, like you don't want to scrape the hop residue off of your tongue, like I've had in many IPAs. So very, very clean IPA, which plays into the bitterness, which is part of flavor evaluation, but also it lacks astringency, which is part of mouthfeel evaluation.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm interested in learning more about that aspect of there's so much. There's so much in beer tasting. It's crazy.
Yeah.
How much there is. When we get into the actual guidelines, we'll go through just how crazy and how many different metrics there are for tasting. But
yeah, and the general categories, without getting too in the weeds in the hops this episode, is you're going to judge a beer or evaluate a beer or describe a beer in 5 main categories. And those categories are the aroma, what does the beer smell like? And as a beer warms, you'll notice that some of the aromas will sort of evolve along with the temperature. And a lot of the aromas will really blossom when the beer warms up. I think a really nice serving temperature is usually about 45 degrees.
Sure.
And then as it warms up to 50, 55 degrees, you can really notice it change and open up.
Yeah.
So the first category is aroma. The second one, obviously, is appearance. How does the beer look? Is it cloudy or hazy, or is it brilliantly clear? What's the head look like? Yeah. What color is it? Those are types of things that you can evaluate when looking at a beer. Of course, the flavor, and in beer judging, the most points you can give to a beer is in the flavor.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Go figure.
And then mouthfeel.
Yep.
And that's really how, like I said, the astringency, if the beer has too much alcohol hotness, and then also if the beer is very thin and watery, or is it really, a heavy, full-bodied, almost chewy beer. And then finally, your overall impression. How much did you like it overall? And then as a judge in a tournament, or if you're submitting a beer into a homebrew competition, that might be the area where a judge gives you feedback on what you could do to improve upon your beer.
Sure.
So that's a real quick kind of 5 areas of evaluating a beer.
We'll get way more into that in other episodes.
Yeah, definitely. This is really just the kind of the first laying down the groundwork for tasting. So with that, are we ready to move on and try the next
I think we're
beer?
ready to blast off.
Okay.
Rice Rocket.
Rice Rocket. All right.
Off square.
Very good.
Oh, man. Well, that one really took off.
Yeah, so Rice Rocket, which they say is a double rice IPA.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever had a rice IPA. Off Square kind of does a little bit of these, I don't want to say oddball or off-the-wall beers, but they've done some pretty interesting ones. They were the first time I had ever had a milkshake IPA.
Yeah, they definitely do some experimenting.
They do some interesting ones, yeah.
Yeah, now, a double rice IPA is not an actual, style.
Okay. Well, we're off to a good start.
Yeah. A double IPA is.
Yeah.
And when you add rice to beer, it can actually really lighten the body of a beer.
Yeah.
So I think a double IPA that comes in at 9% alcohol, which is what this guy is.
It's a big boy.
Yeah, it could be a really heavy, syrupy beer.
Yeah.
But when they add the rice, that helps to lighten the body. So it doesn't feel like you're drinking like a hop syrup, right?
Right. Now, you said that, and I had already taken a sip of my beer here, and it's, for as heavy hitting as a beer as this is, it's not syrupy, really, at all.
Yeah.
Now, if we're talking about that hop characteristic, if we're going beyond hoppiness,
Yeah.
I'm definitely getting more of like a citrusy kind of a deal.
Yeah, I definitely am too.
So very, very starkly, I should say, different to the last one.
Yeah, and they're both pretty strong IPAs,
Yes.
but it shows how much varieties you really have in hop profiles.
Yeah.
Whereas the other one was pine. This is very very fruity.
Yeah, fruity. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if juicy is really now. What exactly does juicy describe? Just the quality of.
Yeah, so juicy hops are typically more of your like fruit derived hops, so definitely can be citrusy, and they're also usually IPAs that have a ton of late hop additions.
Okay.
They're going to have huge hop aroma and a lot of the hop flavors without as much of the bitterness. So they can be just as hoppy as a very bitter West Coast IPA, but they're more on the juicy end. So think of juicy as on maybe the other side of the scale from bitter if you're talking about hop expression in a beer.
Right. Yeah, because this is citrusy as well, but I'm also almost detecting like an oranginess to this.
No, that's very good. Yeah. Definitely some orange and citrus.
What are we dealing with?
I get almost like a little bit of like honey sort of flavor as well. And that can actually come across just from the sheer amount of alcohol that's in that. Sometimes you can have, they call an alcohol-like sweetness.
Got it.
This beer is 60% Pilsner malt and 40% rice. And the hops are Mosaic and Azaka.
Now that's really interesting. They don't. I haven't seen a ton of beer cans or even beer bottles, packaged beers where they actually tell you what they put in. I mean, they're not giving you specific, step-by-step ingredients here, but it's interesting to have them tell you kind of what they're doing.
I think as somebody that's wanting to get out there and taste beers and work on your beer palate. It's great to find beers that say a little bit about what they are. That way you can help, Citra is going to present itself differently as a hop than Azaka and Mosaic. So if you can find beer cans or, any kind of packaging that describes what is in the beer, that can help you build up your palate, and then you understand the difference between what a Pilsner malt base might be versus a Maris Otter malt base or different types of hops.
Absolutely.
And I think that's really great. The more information you have when you're learning how to taste and evaluate beer, I think the better.
For sure. And I mean, this is partially a homebrew channel. There's definitely a home for home brewing on Taste for Adventure. So if you wanted to maybe think about doing a clone of this, maybe you want to have this be one of kind of your first beers, the first homebrew beers, you could probably figure out how to clone this.
You can discern quite a lot from this.
Yeah.
I mean, it says straight up that the grist for this beer is made up of 60% Pilsner malt and 40% rice.
Sure.
So right there, you know that if you do 60% Pilsner malt and 40% rice, and you target an alcohol content of 9%, you got your grain bill. I mean, that's how you make the grain bill for this. You also know that it is Mosaic and Azaka hops, and it comes in at 95 IBUs.
Okay.
So, and IBU stands for International Bitterness Units.
Yes.
And that's one metric of determining, really the bitterness of the hops. The earlier you put the hops in the boil, the more bitterness it's going to contribute. And the later you put the hops in the boil, the less IBUs it will contribute because it'll present itself more as aroma and flavor and less in the bitterness. Sure. So if it's 60-40, I would do, say, 12 pounds of Pilsner malt and 8 pounds of rice.
Sure.
And you got your 60-40 right there, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you got that. That's going to be kind of close to 9%, and then you play with the percentages in the brewing software. And then just, start with those two hops, or maybe do a clean bittering hop first, and then use a lot of the Mosaic and Azaka towards the end, because you obviously are going to have a ton of hop expression in the aroma for this beer especially. Yeah. So you can also dry hop the beer, and that is after it's done fermenting or while it's fermenting, then you add the hops in, which will provide almost no bitterness, but a ton of hop aroma. Okay.
Well, I'll say that's probably a pretty educated guess, about as educated a guess as you can do. As of the time of this recording, you're up to 160 beers brewed.
Let's see. This weekend I'm brewing twice, and I will be brewing batches 173 and 174.
There you go.
Yeah, and I've been brewing about 9 years. So I have a pretty good clip for brewing. I brew for the homebrew club, for friends that come over, for game nights and things, and for the homebrew club. So, but you're you're no stranger to brewing yourself.
No. I mean, I wouldn't put myself at the level you are. But I mean, I've brewed a couple of times with you. You know, we've done a couple of beers for Halloween parties. You know, that I've had. I helped you brew an Oktoberfest that one time that we brewed, I think, on my birthday.
On your birthday, yeah. And then we did the beer that you came up with the concept for. That it was like a caramel milk stout, I think, right?
Yes. Yeah. That was named after one of my favorite Circa Survive songs, Most Dangerous Commercials. We called it Most Dangerous Caramercials.
Yeah.
And that I think that debuted at my housewarming party. Is that right?
I think it did. Yeah. So for that one, it was a lot of caramel malts because we wanted to do the caramel aspect as well as some chocolate malts. Mm-hmm. Pretty straightforward, but I think it did the trick.
I think it turned out really well.
Yeah.
I'd like to brew that one again.
For sure.
But not bad. But getting back on track, this is good.
Yeah.
I like this a lot, actually.
It's funny because for somebody who's a self-proclaimed person that doesn't like IPAs,
turning around maybe.
These are some 2 big IPAs that you're enjoying.
Mm-hmm. This is I'm not getting an insane amount of hop bitterness from this. It's really nice, flavorfully. You know, it's not like, I'm so, I'll get stuck on things like Sierra Nevada or a lot of different beers from, let's say, Three Floyds. Three Floyds kind of, a lot of their beers end up being a little bit more on the hoppy side.
Pretty aggressively hoppy, yeah.
So, and I think that's what's turned me off, but I've been to craft beer bars, and I've slept on, IPAs just because of a preconceived notion. So hopefully you at home are able to, try some of these and really challenge your taste perceptions, really. I mean,
and the more I definitely had very strong style preferences before I went down the road of becoming a beer judge.
Yeah.
And when you're a beer judge, you never know, you are expected to be able to judge and evaluate every style objectively.
Yeah.
So you have to put your personal tastes and preferences aside a little bit and really judge the beer objectively and say what aromas are coming from this beer, what flavors are in this beer, and try to set aside what you like or not. And believe it or not, when you learn how to evaluate beer and appreciate beer a little bit more, your tastes do widen, and you can appreciate. You might not just like generally an IPA if you're just getting a 6-pack and want to have some beer while you're watching the game. But when you really dig into a beer, you really start to appreciate it for what it is, and can really expand your tastes and preferences as well.
Absolutely. If I had seen this on the shelf at my local liquor store, probably would have passed it up. Yeah. So we're already off to a good start with episode 1.
I felt bad getting 2 big IPAs, knowing your preferences for our first episode. I was just looking for the aerospace theme.
Yeah, hey, so. But honestly, I would have this could definitely be like my front runner for like, if I'm like, at the bar or whatever, this could be my beer of the night. This could very easily, I think, be my beer of the night. And I would never have tried it if not for this show, so not bad.
Well, hopefully we'll open your eyes a little bit too. Being Midwesterners, we will try a lot of Midwest-themed beers. Yep. But as the show progresses, we're hoping to get some beers that if you have a pretty good liquor store by you, you should be able to find at least 1 beer per flight near you, whether it be a national craft beer brand or an import that comes over to the States. We want to try to make it so every episode you at least have 1 beer that you can taste along with us at home.
Absolutely. Try to be accessible.
Yeah.
Well, what do you say we land on our inaugural episode with Red Zeppelin by Half Acre? All right. So here we are, Red Zeppelin.
That's right. Not an IPA.
No.
The can says that it is an English-style red ale.
That's kind of funny. You said to me that that's not actually a style that exists.
That's not really a style.
Okay.
I mean, the closest thing to an English-style red ale might be an Irish red. Or a lot of English-style beers can be kind of biscuity and earthy.
Okay.
And a little bit sweeter than a lot of hoppy American styles.
Okay.
So that might be what I expect if I see an English-style red ale. Well, significantly more malty than the IPA.
I would absolutely agree with that statement. I mean, in terms of sheer contrast, we've gone from one end of the spectrum, maybe middle here, and then this is just like, whoa, you're way far out.
Yeah.
So
very, very malty.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is that the hop aroma is completely different, and it's very supportive of the malt.
Yeah.
This is very typical English hop aroma, where it is kind of earthy and herbal. This is extremely earthy in the aroma.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and even in the taste, you can kind of taste, it's like you might describe it as maybe like a breadiness, kind of, but definitely way more malty.
Bready and biscuity as well. So
right.
Think of really like a biscuit.
Yeah.
And I get a lot of that along with the earthiness. So it really is pretty English as far as all their flavor profiles. Maybe even a little bit nutty.
Okay. And I mean, if we're kind of, just scraping the surface of judging, but I mean, it looks pretty red orangey to me.
It's very
dark.
red. Yeah, I would definitely classify this as an amber colored beer.
That's a nice beer.
It is. It's pretty atypical of a lot of beers that I've had, and it definitely tastes more like an imported European style, where it's less assertive, less aggressive. It doesn't have those, big heavy stout-like, roast, big flavors, and it doesn't have the big hops. But it also is definitely not bland.
No, yeah.
It's a very robust beer, but kind of in the middle of kind of the flavor range.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the things that you'd like to most learn about through this channel?
I want to, for me, I would like to transition from drinking just to drink to drinking for the enjoyment of what I'm getting. I don't know if I'll ever be quite at the beer judge level.
I said that a few years ago.
It's true. All right, well.
What if episode, the finale is you becoming a beer judge?
It's just crowning me a beer judge. That's giving me my own, I brew, judge shirt.
That's right.
That'd be great. Well, then, yeah, that's fine. We'll see how things progress. Episode 1, you plant the seed. And,
that's right.
Who knows? Episode 100, I could be, getting my own certification.
That's right.
So
yeah. Thank you so much for joining us on the very first episode of Taste for Adventure. Next, we're really going to talk about how to judge a beer, not just kind of generically evaluate a beer like sort of talked about today.
Yeah.
So the types of things that you might see at a judging table, and really talking a lot more about those 5 categories of evaluating a beer. And then after that, we're going to talk about the BJCP and where to find score sheets and style guidelines so you can judge a beer like the beer judges do.
Yeah. Well, drink along with us if you can find the beers that we're going to be covering, because this is hopefully going to be a highly interactive series.
That's what we hope for. And we also encourage you to recommend your beer tasting and judging experiences to us. Give us recommendations. Yeah. We're always looking for good beers to drink, or unique beers to drink, or great examples of style, or maybe poor examples of the style too for the contrast.
Yeah.
So please have a conversation with us, stay engaged, and we hope to go on this Taste for Adventure together.
Yeah. Well, cheers.
Cheers.
How much that spilled. Oh my god.
Oh no.
It's a live one.
lightweight beer.